Every great brisket cook starts on the farm. This 16-pound prime grade brisket comes from Double R Ranch, which I believe is a subsidiary of Snake River Farms. I've never had a bad brisket from Snake River Farms, but as you can see here, this monster has a lot of fat on it. The problem with this much fat is you pay for all of that fat, and you're not going to eat all that fat, so you always want to trim that fat down to about 1/4 of an inch or so, and you don't really want it any thicker than that. You can see the decal is just massive. I mean, just an absolutely massive piece of hard fat. You want to trim that down. You don't want to create a cavity, but you do want to trim that off so that it's flush with the rest of the meat. You want to cut the edges and trim the edges, get all that oxidized meat off of there and get a good shape to this brisket. And then you can see some silver skin here. Silver skin is not something you want to leave on the brisket because it's chewy and you don't want a chewy brisket. That time again, friends. It's juicy brisket time. Started my fire with the Lone Star with some charcoal like I always do, and then I put some hickory wood on top. And while I'm waiting for that smoke to clean up, I'll have a cup of coffee, and then it's time to think about going ahead to get this brisket ready. I'm gonna start my flavor profile of this 16-pound brisket with some Worcestershire sauce. I'm doing this more for flavor than anything else. Today I'm using Malcolm Reed's steak rub, and it's just a phenomenal rub, and it will go perfect on a brisket. I'm going to put a lot of it on this brisket because this is a big piece of meat, and if you don't put a lot of it on, the flavor won't come through like you'd hope. That smoke cleans up to a real thin smoke, it's time to go ahead and put the brisket on the Lone Star. I'm going to go on the top shelf. It's going to be a little warmer, so a little faster cook today, but I am going to put the fat cap up. That way, hopefully the rendering fat will help keep this brisket juicy. Now, after about an hour and a half, it's time to go ahead and check on this brisket, and oh my gosh, does it smell amazing. Color's coming along really fast. I'm not sure that I've seen the color develop on a brisket this fast. Fire maintenance is huge when it comes to a stick burner, especially with brisket. You want to keep those temps right about 225 to start, and then I usually bump them up to about 250 and finish at around 275. After about another hour, I go ahead and check on this brisket again. It's time to get some apple cider spritz on this brisket. The reason for that is to make sure this brisket stays moist, as well as the colder surface will attract more smoke. Now, after about 5 hours cook time, the brisket has reached the color that I'm looking for, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this brisket. I always cook to the color I desire, and I like mine a little darker. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this brisket in a pan with some beef tallow, a stick of butter, and a can of beef broth. I'm going to wrap the foil on the top of it and just let this guy braise until the finish line. Now before I put the foil back on, I want to go ahead and check the temps. Temps are good because they give you a guide, an idea of how far along the brisket is, and not surprisingly, this brisket is much further along in temp than I was expecting. It's already went past the stall, which usually happens around 155, 160, and this brisket's closer to 175. So I go ahead and put my probe in. I'm going to monitor this brisket about every 15 to 20 minutes from here on out. After about another hour and 20 minutes, I come back out and check it again, and now I'm getting that tenderness I'm looking for. The probe is just kind of sliding in, just like room temperature butter in places. Now this is where it's very tricky. Pulling the brisket off, when to pull the brisket off is the most important thing. And since I'm still getting pockets of resistance here, I put the brisket back on the smoker for about another 15 minutes, and then when I probed it, everything was absolutely perfect. So I took the brisket off, I put it in my oven, and just let it rest for about 2.5 hours, and then it was time to go ahead and slice this guy up, and oh my gosh. Gotta tell you, this was one of my favorite briskets of all time. Everything just came together perfectly, and when I bit into that first smoky, incredible bite, oh my gosh, make sure you give this a shot.